Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the political commentator Benedict Spence and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the Metro, their headline, Hell on Earth. Back with that and more after this.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. And I'm feeling good. And I'm feeling good.
This is Debbie's nightmare. Losing track of invoices has led to an unexpected visit from her suppliers. But this is merely a figment of her unwoken imagination. With Intuit QuickBooks, Debbie can see her finances in real time, so there's no surprises.
Amazon Prime Big Deal Days are coming the 10th and 11th of October. 2 days of epic deals that'll make you feel like a big deal. Save on electronics, home, kitchen and more. Amazon Prime Big Deal Days are coming the 10th and 11th of October, exclusively for Prime members. Join Prime now.
Checking out her new shopping haul. Got a party new outfit and all.
Oh, chalky milkshake. That stain's gonna be a nightmare. But it's okay. Mum's got new Bold Platinum with extra stain removal. On cold, of course. Bit of cherry blossom and rose water and life's good again.
Now she's off out with her friends. She's living her best life again.
New Bold Platinum with extra stain removal. Always keep away from children.
Vitality gets your health moving forward. And this is how it's done. They help you get healthier. Excuse me. And they get you back in the game. Taking you to the next level. Always a step ahead. Because progress only happens when you move forward. And forward feels good. Move forward with Vitality.
For over 40 years, we've unlocked the heart of Latin America, bringing you its hidden wonders with award-winning expertise and a treasury of local knowledge. Experience something extraordinary. Journey Latin America, Atoll Protected.
With Regina Blitz and its extra large sheets, you'll clean up in a flash. And for other jobs, big or small, try Regina Blitz Giant.
New year, new us.
Paul and I are going to split up.
Right. We're getting on a lot better since we decided to split up.
Yeah, we are, aren't we?
Honey?
It comes out of Bee's bum holes.
Does it?
You only regret the things you didn't do.
I need to say something.
I'm pregnant.
Well, I had a baby very young. It ruined my life. Mum.
Oh, God.
Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the political commentator Benedict Spence with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So let's take a look then at the front pages. After a third day of violence, the Metro pictures a little girl standing among the rubble in Gaza City. Their headline, Hell on Earth. Well, the Financial Times has a picture of the destruction in Gaza too, with the headline, Israel enforces complete siege of Gaza. Likewise, The Guardian also leading with the siege of Gaza and Hamas threatening hostages. The Eye pictures Israeli soldiers preparing for a possible ground invasion, also mentioning Hamas threatening to execute hostages if further attacks on Palestinian homes are made. The Daily Mail leads with the pro-Palestine protest in front of the Israeli embassy in London. Well, the Express describes what has happened, or transpired rather, in the Israel-Hamas war as a bloodbath, stating Israel vows revenge. Well, don't forget, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of those papers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Jenny Kleeman and Benedict Spence. You know, an extraordinary few days of news, more bodies being discovered, it seems, in terms of Israel. But many of the newspapers now starting to focus on Gaza, the repercussions and the threats from Hamas to execute the hostages that they've taken.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much tragedy upon tragedy, the kind of cycle of violence going into the third day after this horrific terrorist attack. Israeli officials saying it's their 9/11. The question being now, is their response going to be like the war on terror, where you have, a quick and horrific response to masked to kind of be an echo of the terror of what they saw at the weekend. And it is just so horrific on all sides because you have ordinary civilians being used as pawns in this. This is a war with no limits. On one side in Israel, you have babies, small children being taken hostage. You have grandmothers being murdered and the murder being live streamed on Facebook to their families. I mean, just the most appalling atrocities. And then you have Israel saying that this is going to change the state of affairs in the Middle East. This siege on Gaza, where there is water cut off, there is food cut off, there is no internet, there is no electricity. It is impossible to imagine how this densely populated area is going to survive. And it is just incredibly tragic on all sides, especially as more details emerge today.
Yes, so two things, the cutting off of water and electricity. The second, this threat to execute the hostages that they're now holding from Hamas. Our Foreign Affairs editor suggesting that in the past Israel's had a door knock policy where they say to a specific building, it's you, civilians get out. And that's what Hamas still wants to have, the warning that might be there.
Yeah, it appears to still be happening, actually. The Israelis have said to civilians in Gaza, these are the areas to avoid. They haven't said necessarily what the buildings are going to be, obviously, but they have said, actually, these are the areas that we're going to target, these are the ones that aren't. It's sort of very grimly fascinating to see what comes next, but also what the calculation here was, because one almost wonders if Hamas has slightly miscalculated this with the broadcasting of the atrocities, because I think a lot of goodwill towards the Palestinian cause has just been torched. I think the prospect of an independent Palestinian state is off the table for a generation. Especially in the aftermath, actually, of Azerbaijan getting away with the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh a little more than a month ago, and nobody really said anything. Is anybody really going to stop Israel from doing whatever it wants in this situation? Probably not, because what they will say, what the public will say, what they are saying, is the whole point about this Jewish state, about Israel, is about security. Fundamentally, that's what it's about. If we cannot provide our own security on our terms, actually, what's the point of the Jewish state? So I think you will see that it will not be a sort of a wanton bloodbath. It will not be a sort of a genocide. It will not be something where the people are pushed into the sea. It will be predominantly about destroying Hamas. But make no mistake, they're not going to stop until that has been achieved. And if there are collateral victims as part of that, the Israeli public probably are not going to be too upset, having seen firsthand what has happened. And you're also seeing this in the West. Actually, far fewer commentators, people who are very pro-Palestine, are able to hide behind the image of Hamas's freedom fighters now. You're seeing the narrative change. It's no longer, these are rumours that the Israelis put out. It's, oh, well, this is what decolonization looks like. What did you think was going to happen? And a lot of publics in the West as well are sitting there thinking, absolutely not. We will not put up with that.
Well, in fact, there's been a statement just over half an hour ago. In fact, the Quint, as they call it, President Macron of France, Chancellor Scholz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Sunak of the UK, President Biden of the US. We express our steadfast and united support to the state of Israel and our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism. Our countries will support Israel in its efforts to defend itself and its people against such atrocities. I mean, there's a very strong statements now, aren't they, from Western nations in support?
Yes, we also had Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, coming out today and saying, you know, how distressed he was by what had happened, but also by the siege of Gaza as well, and reminding Israel of its, you know, commitment to uphold international law when it comes to civilians and the treatment of civilians. I mean, you have to think how the ramifications of this and how far this will go. On one level, we already have an enormous tragedy. It looks set to continue. But then you have to think, how was Hamas funded? How was Hamas prepared? How far does all of that go? Iran has said that they have not had nothing to do with this attack. But you do have to wonder how these terrorists can learn how to paraglide and have all of this, you know, incredibly coordinated, under-the-radar attack. And so, you know, this is just the beginning of something which is going to be very far-reaching.
Well, in fact, actually, the White House's National Security Council Coordinator, John Kirby, saying tonight Iran is complicit, but there is no direct evidence tying it to the attacks. You'll be sure they'll be looking for it.
Oh, Iran is very good at this. It's one of the best in the world at causing proxy conflicts, be it in Lebanon, be it in Yemen, be it in North Africa, frankly. But again, another area where you'll beginning to see maybe has Hamas miscalculated is the condemnation from the Arab states. Now, usually they all come out and they're very pro-Palestine. And in this case, actually, they were also quite pro-Palestine. But you began to see cracks in the messaging. Morocco directly criticising and condemning Hamas. The UAE, again, condemning Hamas for what it's done. This is, you know, one of the lines of reasoning behind this has been that this is Hamas and, by extension, Iran trying to drive a wedge between Israel and the West and the Arab states, Saudi Arabia in particular. Of course, those normalisation talks potentially off the table for now. But there is a lot... The patience that a lot of these countries have had for the Palestinians, specifically Hamas, has been wearing thin for a long time. And I think a lot of them will look at this and see the eggs that they've put into the basket of throwing in their lot with Israel and the West and say, actually, no, this is not the time to blow that up.
Well, let's take a look at more papers, shall we? The Daily Mail again, Hamas will kill a hostage for each Israeli attack. Up the top there, London last night, a protest that's still ongoing, pro-Palestinian. And certainly we saw Rishi Sunak at a service today with the chief rabbi, suggesting his full support for Jewish people who feel threatened. I will stop at nothing to keep you safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets, he said, and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say not here, not in Britain, not this century. But these live pictures, as you can see, still on the streets, it looks like, or latest pictures rather, still on the streets, it looks like it's Whitehall now. They've moved on from the Israeli embassy in the Kensington area of London. And Joe Biden's also coming out, started to talk about needing to support Jewish communities as well. These are the live scenes now, still police on the streets, Jenny.
I mean, it is terrifying for a lot of Jewish people in this country. You know, I saw some tragic statements from Jewish Free School, the headmaster saying there's going to be no detention because they want children to be able to go home in the school bus. They don't have to wear the uniform with the blazer on it. You know, it is terrible that in this day and age that anybody in this country can live in fear of attack. A lot of Jewish people do feel very targeted, and particularly seeing some of the response online when this attack initially happened.
But this is such a fraught issue for so many decades.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But this is an unprecedented terrorist attack. This is the biggest attack Israel has faced. And when you look at it, it is equivalent, as they say, to 9/11. To the Bataclan attacks, you know, what happened in the music festival very much.
You know, Mumbai, this multiple waves and multiple days.
Different order of magnitude of horror than anything that has gone before. And the idea that this is going to be, you know, used in the same game of political football in talking about the Middle East.
You're saying no?
No, this is something else.
I mean, it's interesting that this is the largest single instance of Jewish people being killed since the Holocaust. And I find it very curious and not a little bit worrying. This country, the UK's modern perception of itself, is actually framed almost entirely through the Second World War and the Holocaust. That's where all of the sort of the lines of the rhetoric about tolerance and diversity, Britain being a multicultural society, is set against the idea of what Europe was to prevent that sort of thing from happening. We see almost everything through the prism of the Second World War and that message and that lesson. How can it be then, when we are so obsessed with this period of history, that in such large numbers, actually, Jewish people can still feel and visibly are being intimidated on the street. You know, last year there were men driving through North London shouting about attacking and raping Jewish people. And as far as I'm aware, none of those people have been charged.
The problem is, though, that if you have a blockade of Gaza where you pull basic, you know, amenities for people that allows them to live, that's exactly what they're complaining about.
Yes,
but Jewish people aren't doing that.
There is a point, yes, that has to be raised. As somebody who is Jewish, you know, being Jewish does not mean that you are pro-Israel. It is kind of racist to make that assumption that because of your ethnic background, you're going to have some political national alliance, which is what makes this particularly sad, that this has become a kind of ethnic thing, when in fact what you're talking about is a political thing to do with borders and land and incursions into it.
Yeah, this is an entire family murdered on their kibbutz. A picture that was released actually by the Israeli authorities. You know, another family. But you know, there's so much coverage and so much to read. We're running over. We had so much in News at 10. On any other night, of course, the newspapers might well have been dominated by coverage of the Labour Party conference. We will turn our attention to what was said there and look ahead to Tuesday as well when we come back. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Jenny Kleeman and Benedict Spence. Welcome back to both of you. Has to be said, Labour's conference has been overshadowed, not surprisingly, by events in Israel and Gaza. But here we are, power to the people. Labour's grid bid is the headline for the Metro. Labour's pledged to rewire Britain. As Rachel Reeves said, its energy policy would create 220,000 jobs and slash bills, pushing for growth and iron discipline. But many of the papers also looking ahead to Sir Keir Starmer as well. So shall we do that part of it?
Sure. I mean, the prospect of more devolution, which I'm sure is going to get everybody very excited, is obviously this is, you know, it's something that's going to appeal to a lot of people, especially more sort of, I suppose, conservative, socially conservative-minded people who might feel that they want more control over their local area, especially when it comes to things like house building and that sort of thing. The problem with this is coming hot off the heels of Rachel Reeves' speech about how we need iron discipline, and she's going to be the Iron Chancellor, a lot of metallic language. The problem is, if you're going to sort of jet start, you know, turbocharge growth, putting things like planning permission and house building into the hands of people who are diametrically opposed to those things isn't actually a very good idea, because that's one of the things that the Tories have really struggled with the last few years. So it's real electioneering. It sounds good to a lot of people who they do need to bring over from the centre.
She's simplified planning rules as well to get some of these big projects through.
I mean, when that happens, fantastic, but that is a difficult thing to get done in itself.
The Guardian have a few lines that... It always annoys me when papers have lines that are going to be delivered tomorrow, but an economy that works for the whole country is what the British people want, he will say. The Tories know that. They stood at this crossroads before. They called it levelling up. But as soon as they counted their votes, they turned their back. And that's what this is about. It's about betraying red wall voters. And they've got so many examples about how those who they made promises to about levelling up have been betrayed. And so this is clearly going to be a kind of fruitful seam to mine.
OK, and our political editor says he's got to connect with voters. That's the great ambition for tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. We've got plenty more to say. Luckily, we've got more programme to do it in. Jenny Kleeman, Benedict Spence, thank you very much indeed. We will see you for the 11.